right now, we're going to talk about igniting innovation. In the opening remarks, I talked a little bit about the relationship between London Stock Exchange Group and OpenFin, and delighted to welcome Nej Lajal, who's group head of the Workspace platform at London Stock Exchange Group, for some would say an interrogation. So we'll see what we can squeeze out of Nej. We did talk about the chairs and where they should be placed, and should it be more like mastermind style, or but we feel pretty comfortable here. So Nej, thank you so much for joining us on stage. We are super delighted to have London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG, as a key partner. And I think tonight, we've heard lots of different presentations, very much talking about AI, talking about the importance of UX, talking about UI, the hybrid kind of interaction with humans. So there's a real breadth of topics. And I think I'm hoping in this discussion we can kind of bring it all together from a kind of a product view of the world and an LSEG view of the world about how this comes together for end users and your strategy. So I was thinking maybe the starting point for this is, what do you see as being the biggest themes in the last 18 months? And we'll take the AI piece as a given. So starting before that, what are the big themes and trends that we've seen over the last 18 months?
Thank you, Adam, and thanks to everyone for the time today. Delighted to be here. I'll start with the slightly boring ones, actually, which are still, to me, that they are interesting. But I think just looking at the way enterprise cloud is now maturing, I think going through the adoption phase, and I think people from a commercial standpoint looking at the economics of cloud versus an on-prem based way of managing business, that's interesting. Cyber, continues to be something that again is relevant, and I think blockchain and DLT type technologies, they're not going away, and I think that's another interesting theme. The bit that I'm more excited about, though, is certainly generative AI. We'll talk a bit about that in the context of my role. But I think thematically, one of the most interesting things that stands out to me is what I would describe as a world that's moving from a paradigm of apps to workflows. And I think there's an incredible opportunity to simplify workflows like never before, collapsing them, taking the friction out, and ultimately maximizing productivity, as we've mentioned before, and impact, both system and user level. And that's really good news, because what we're effectively saying is there's an opportunity to democratize access to a broad array of users, many more than before. That's what tends to happen when you simplify workflows. And that also applies to a broad set of use cases as well. So I think incredibly exciting, and happy to elaborate on that.
Yeah, and so I guess it's interesting to think about the intersection here. So how, if we're turning from apps to workflows, what is the traditional UI? What's the next generation UI experience? How does that evolve, in this context?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I guess the question I'll ask the room and you and I've got some folks some very familiar faces that will know my answer to this question. But if I said to you, what is Henry Ford famous for? I think you'd get, depending on the lens, some of the obvious answers. He invented the car, the assembly line, scaling, the manufacturing process, and they're absolutely the right answers. In fact, my favorite answer, it's not my answer, but certainly one of my mentors and something that really stuck with me was actually Henry Ford created the driver. And if you digest that for a second, it's quite powerful to think about it in that context. And therefore, what is the next generation UI? Well, when we start thinking about solutions, in this instance the UI, the why of what we do is we deliver digital experiences to financial services professionals that need access to information as quickly and as convenient as possible to take action. Fundamentally, that's what we're in the business of doing that, and we do it across a different array of personas: wealth managers, bankers, traders, risk managers, and so on. So when I think about that and I think about the driver, the question I'm asking myself is, who will our customers become in years from now? How will they evolve into not just potentially, operating a vehicle to go from A to B, but listening to music while they're doing that? And that, coupled with the opportunity we have, the generational opportunity we have with generative AI, makes things very interesting. And I think actually it's a combination of workflows that are simplified plus generative AI. So I think that's the headline. A couple of other points I'd make is that it's increasingly, clear that our customers within, essentially capital markets, they're the same users that use the consumer platforms that we're all familiar with. And those consumer platforms have already solved for these very seamless workflows, the inherent hyper-personalization. We just expect that. And therefore, it's fair to say that our customers, their expectations of innovation, of personalization, and of these types of experiences has never been higher. So I think when we think about that, what we see is, more of an opportunity to close the gap between that capital markets experience versus that consumer platform. One example could be the way you just architect the UI, right, to capture more signals about behaviors that inform how you further iterate and improve the experience commensurate with the persona that you are, you're helping effectively.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And just as you're talking, I mean, you mentioned a number of personas in there, and I think, we definitely see that from, our perspective to focus and the shift. So much of what we talk about is transitioning that innovation in that consumer world to the enterprise level. And, we've got a good kind of leading star in consumer land, around some of these experiences for sure. So, Jorge was on the hybrid AI panel earlier. The panel were talking a little bit of a higher level about, where human meets AI. But I was wondering if we could go just a little bit deeper, specifically for LSEG. Give us some evidence, give us some hard thinking. Where are you going? Why are you going there? What does it mean? What does Gen AI going to be? Where do we think it's going to impact the LSEG products in a near to medium term?
All right, so I think some foundational points first. The first is accessibility is incredibly important. So we live in a world, again, with my background, I think from an equities trading perspective, fragmented applications. You get the joke, right, Adam? I don't need to elaborate, but lots of copying and pasting, lots of friction in user journeys, and we're moving to a space now where we want to start to bring that together. And therefore, from an LSEG perspective, what's super exciting for me is I'm not actually pitching the single dealer platform. I will meet customers where they want to be met. I will integrate our value proposition, which is our data and analytics, in the native workflow. And that immediately lowers the barriers to entry as it pertains to accessibility. So you've got to get that right, because generative AI, as powerful is the potential, it is a means. And the starting point is in ensuring that it's as convenient as possible for our customers. The second thing I'd say is, and this was touched upon thematically, but actually I think, certainly in capital markets, clearly the bar is higher because of the regulatory obligations, and that compliance first requirement is real. And I think what's actually happening is, Gen AI, the requisite is very clear. It is having a handle on data. So I think what we're seeing now, and we'll see over the medium term, is actually firms looking at data and knowing that they have data as an asset, but actually really mobilizing, because they're going to get a 10x benefit now, which was not the case previously. So I think many firms now are thinking about, how do I make that data accessible, discoverable, and actually extract that value. So they're the foundational points. Now, in terms of how you put it to work, it does become interesting, because I guess many people have used ChatGPT, and from my perspective, we've gone from a world where we have highly curated user interfaces that embed complexity and all of the information and the utilities that you need. But actually, the paradigm's about to change, because an agent might know and will know the questions that you care about most. So prompting you to build your experience. And I don't know that you go from this kind of high density, highly curated experience to just like a chatbot experience, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. So I think, yeah, and what does that mean in terms of the use cases that we're thinking about? There are, this is the cool thing. If you think about, like I said, execution traders, bankers on the move, at the desk, risk managers, wealth advisors, what's clear is that there is a number of events which are universally applicable. Discoverability is critically important, and we will understand that as users day to day. And whether that's information that's being pushed towards you through some type of notification, or you're pulling the information through some type of search experience, you've got to get discoverability right. And the second piece is, once you discover information, you need to be able to digest it and consume it. So how is it presented? How is it visualized? And how can you analyze it and then ultimately take action? It could be to share, it could be to trade, it could be to do something else. Right. And I think, going back to your question about use cases, that's really the answer. As we step into a more democratized environment and capability set, we expect to be able to deliver those types of capabilities. And I think the punchline effectively is we're doubling down on augmentation, user augmentation. And the last thing I'd say is, just to be specific on this, users aren't limited to the consumer side of what we're delivering. It's also the producer side. And we've talked about the producer in the context of, development community, or, people in the business of, creating and pushing content. Maybe you're driving research or sales and trading commentary or news. But the point is that there's a supply side of the ecosystem, and that's very real as well. So very excited about both of those dimensions.
No, thanks for that. And I think it's really interesting in talking to, when you talk about data mobilization, I think it's interesting. We talk to a huge amount of clients and partners, and it's really clear people are really investing in that data management space right now. Right, so you can say, well, people have always invested in cleaning up their data. They know they need to clean their data. It's like, but what's the purpose, right? And it's like, okay, well, the purpose is because to use AI, properly, systematically, to get the maximum benefit, we need that data to be organized in a relatively good state. And again, there's actually AI tools which help you with that as well. Super interesting. So. We've talked about AI. We've talked about the importance of the UI. So does that complete it? Is that client experience? Is that customer experience? Is that the chain complete, or is there anything else we need to do?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it, but I think the answer is no. It's not it. I think what we end up with is potentially an opportunity to think about how you do have a natural language experience. You do have persona-driven prompts, and you have some type of augmentation between the types of visualizations that you expect to see versus the ability to discover information through these natural language processes. So I think that's key. On the producer experiences, I double-click into that. That's the reason why it's not where it stops, because I think the ability to systematize from a producer perspective, the ability to discover standards and tools that you need to be able to do your job, whether you're a developer or you're manufacturing and you're publishing content, for example, and then to be able to fundamentally reuse those building blocks. And I think the third kind of node on this particular flywheel is learning, systematically learning. As you deliver the user experience, it's about taking that back in and thinking about how you continue to learn. And again, this is not news, right, for us, because if you think about the consumer platform experience, everyday people are able to create post content, and as part of that flywheel, they can immediately assess the proficiency, the impact of that content, and they can run experiments, and then they can go again. So I think you've got to think about both sides of that ecosystem, in order to really continue to drive value, ultimately in the interests of customers.
And when we talk about the customers as well, so we talk about that innovation, you have lots of great ideas. We think about that internally as well. It's like, okay, well, what do we do because we strategically believe in a shift and a change that's going to happen versus, what do we, what are clients asking for versus, what does the regular support queue look like of small enhancements? So it's a constant struggle. And, we always think about how do we make these decisions? How do we get the highest return on these decisions? And I think a lot of that comes down to how you collaborate with clients. And I think you've been in a number of senior positions, client-facing positions across different organizations. And what have you seen as being the best way to get that collaboration kind of moving with your customers?
Yeah, this is an emotive one for me because I really care about clients, but also once upon a time, many years ago, I was told, I was in a tech position at the time, early in my career, and I was told, actually, if you want to do something for clients, just wait for salespeople to tell you what they need. Really? And actually, if you think about the way the industry's evolved, I think we've gone a long way in understanding that what you've got to do is you've got to ensure that all of the right people are in the room. And actually, to build great products, you need a combination of an engineering, of a design, a product, and a sales lens. But ultimately, exposing creativity, and creative people to the problem is very, very powerful. So I think the first thing is about making sure you get that piece right. The second piece, which is very closely connected, is if you think about the industry, certainly within banking, you see a lot of manufacturing-based organizations. They manufacture their own products. There's a Conway's Law element to it. So there's silos and different teams responsible for pushing products. And that's a large, generalization, simplification. But that's one paradigm. I think we're moving now to a better understanding of outcomes and client needs. And I think, as people start to mobilize, organize their teams based on client needs, you break silos, you do all of those good things. And, whether it's like a jobs to be done framework, or it's, just 101 understanding the circumstances, the objectives, the challenges, why someone's interested, I think that's incredibly powerful because that's what you start with. And if you can take the understanding of the persona, you connect that with the pertinent use cases, and then you can combine that with some capabilities. In the middle of that Venn diagram is the solution. And I think that's certainly the basics, because what you're saying resonates with me a lot in that you don't always know, you don't want to walk into a client meeting and lead with answers and look for questions, right? At the same time, you've got to be careful about walking in and saying, hey, I'm here with the genie and your wish is my command, because that's not realistic either. So it's got to be like some kind of realistic middle ground where you are placing a bet on some foundational capabilities, but you are sincerely co-creating and contextualizing the application of those capabilities in accordance with what those particular users need.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's great. Well, listen, many thanks for the insight so far. We're going to wrap up. I think before I let you go, there's a question we get asked a lot, and I know you get asked a lot, and the audience are curious. Obviously, London Stock Exchange Group had a really significant, two significant announcements this year, one with OpenFin clearly, and the other one was with another company called Microsoft. And I think the market has a really high expectation of what the London Stock Exchange Group and Microsoft partnership is going to deliver. I think it'd be great if you could share, what is the latest of that partnership and what can people expect next?
Sounds good. So we've got our Capital Markets Day coming up, so I can't give you too much of a preview, but I can certainly speak thematically, and I can say personally from my perspective, this was certainly one of the key factors that was incredibly appealing to me when I had to make a tough decision earlier this year when I joined LSEG, and I will tell you genuinely, it's been vindicated because this is incredibly serious. It's a 10-year deal. If you think about the power of combining the iconic institution that is, the London Stock Exchange Group, and it's not just, the exchange business anymore as we know. It's the is the powerhouse that is the data and analytics. And then you combine that with the power of Microsoft, given its distribution and footprint and investment in AI, the ingredients become very special. And I think what I would say is there's kind of three themes that we are really focused on with our partners at Microsoft, and there will be more, that we're sharing over the next few days. But one is about augmentation. So being able to deliver experiences into native Microsoft experiences and interfaces, and to, in seconds, enable a user to be able to discover what they need, to visualize it, to be able to do something with it, to share it, to action it. So I think that's one piece. The enabler for that is interoperability. That's the second theme, and it's foundational. So OpenFin are our other equal key partner, and being able to again meet customers where they want to be met, whether it's a Microsoft experience or it's an OpenFin powered one, and I think that's critically important. And the third is actually its community. We think with the proficiency of Teams and the recognition that being able to connect with your members of community in order to help you do your job, that is very important, clearly in financial services, not limited to, and we think that is a major ingredient in terms of our opportunity for success.
Great. Well, listen, we are out of time. There is one panel left, but for now, Nej, thank you so much for joining me this evening, and look forward to another session in the coming days.
Thank you.
Thank you.